All right, so are you ready for a deep dive into Mel Robbins' new book, The Let Them Theory? I just
Mm,
finished it, and oh my gosh, it's
yeah.
such a game changer, I
Oh,
think.
yeah. I've heard good things about that one.
Yeah.
Um, what is it all about?
The title kind of gives it away.
Yeah.
It's all about learning to let go of the things that you can't control and just focusing on what you can control. And it sounds simple enough,
Yeah.
but honestly, it's so profound.
That does sound intriguing. Is it like one of those like Zen mindfulness things?
It definitely has that kind of vibe,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also super practical. Mel Robbins is really good about giving you actionable steps, you
Right.
know. And the whole concept is rooted in this really hilarious story about her son's prom night.
Prom night.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm curious.
So just picture this. It's pouring rain, her son's date shows up,
Yeah.
and the date has a muddy dress. And they realize that they forgot to make a dinner reservation
Mm.
for like 20 teenagers
Oh,
in
no.
tuxedos.
Oh, my gosh. That's every parent's worst nightmare.
Right. And I think most of us would be freaking out, trying to micromanage the entire situation.
Yeah.
But Mel had this epiphany in that moment. She realized that all of her stressing and trying to control everything was just making things worse.
So what does she do?
Well, she gave her son $40 for tacos and sent him off into the downpour, muddy dress and all. And you know what? They had the best time.
That's a great story. It really does illustrate how clinging to control can really backfire.
Exactly. And that's the whole premise of Let Them. It's about recognizing that the more that we try to force things, the more resistance that we create. It's like trying to swim upstream.
Yeah.
It just exhausts you and gets you nowhere.
So it's about surrendering to the flow.
Kind of. But it's not about being passive either. There's a crucial let me element to it as well,
Okay.
which is all about taking responsibility for what you can control, like your reactions, your boundaries, your choices.
Okay.
That,
That makes sense. It's not just about letting other people do their thing. It's about empowering yourself in the process.
exactly. It's like finding this sweet spot between acceptance and action.
That's really interesting. You're making me want to read this book. Does she give specific examples about how to put this into practice?
Oh, tons. She talks about everything, from dealing with coworkers that are difficult to even surviving a heartbreak. And she uses this brilliant seesaw analogy
Okay.
to explain how trying to control things that you just can't control actually gives the other person all the power.
A seesaw analogy. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, it's a really helpful visual. So just imagine that you're on one side of the seesaw. You're desperately trying to control the other person's side, which
Mhm.
represents like all the things that you can't control.
Yeah.
And the more that you focus on that, the more your side sinks, which gives the other person all the leverage.
So let them and let me are like counterweights, helping you regain balance and reclaim your power on the seesaw.
Exactly. It's about shifting your focus from what you can't control to what you can control.
That makes a lot of sense. I can start to see how this could be applied to so many areas in life.
Right. And one area that I found particularly relatable was her take on adult friendships.
Oh, tell me about it. Making friends as an adult can be so much harder than it was back in school. What does she say about that?
Well, she calls it the great scattering,
Hmm.
how everyone's lives just kind of spin off in different directions as we get older. And all those friendships that we had in school, they just naturally kind of fade.
Yeah.
It happens.
That's so true. Everyone's so busy with their careers and their families and just life in general.
Yeah.
It is hard to maintain those connections.
Exactly. And Mel doesn't sugarcoat it either. She even talks about her own personal struggles with friendship after she moved to a new town in her 50s.
So what's her advice? How do you make new friends as an adult?
Well, one thing she really emphasizes is this habit of going first.
Okay.
So it's all about being proactive,
Mm.
putting yourself out there and taking the initiative to connect with people.
That's good advice. I think a lot of us, we just kind of wait for other people to reach out, but maybe we need to be more willing to take that first step ourselves.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be this big grand gesture. It can be as simple as striking up a conversation with someone at a coffee shop or inviting a coworker to grab lunch.
It's about creating those little moments of connection that can blossom into something more.
Exactly. And another really interesting point that she makes is about the give it a year rule.
What's that?
She says that it takes about a year to build a solid friendship. So it's about consistently showing up, being present,
Hmm.
and investing in that relationship over time.
That's actually really encouraging. Sometimes I think we give up on friendships too easily, especially in this age of instant gratification.
Totally.
Well,
It's like we expect to have these deep connections overnight. But real friendships take time and effort to cultivate.
Yeah.
And speaking of effort, one of the things I found most fascinating was her take on motivating other people to change.
Oh, that's a tough one. We all have those people in our lives, right?
Yeah.
The ones that we wish would make different choices.
I know, right? And it's so tempting to try to pressure them or lecture them into changing. But Mel's approach is totally different. She draws on some really fascinating research from neuroscience to explain why pressure often backfires.
Really? Tell me more about that.
Okay, so apparently our brains are actually wired to resist pressure.
Mm.
When we feel like someone is trying to control us, it triggers this defensive response, so like our inner rebel comes out, and we just dig our heels in even deeper.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how do you motivate someone without pressuring them?
Well, she introduces this concept called the ABC loop, which is based on something called motivational interviewing.
Motivational interviewing. What is that?
It's basically a way of asking questions and guiding someone toward their own desire for change, rather than imposing your own agenda on them.
So instead of telling someone what they should do, you help them discover it for themselves.
Exactly. It's about asking open-ended questions and listening without judgment,
Yeah.
and just helping them connect with their own values and goals. It's really fascinating.
The more you talk about this book, the more I want to pick it up myself. It sounds like she covers such a wide range of topics, all connected by this central theme of letting go.
It really is. And she doesn't shy away from the tough stuff either. She even dives into how to navigate heartbreak
Ooh,
using the let them principle.
that's definitely something I'm curious about.
Yeah, it's a really insightful section. She talks about the importance of setting boundaries, allowing yourself to grieve, and resisting that urge to chase after someone who is just not right for you.
You're definitely piquing my curiosity with all of these little nuggets. I think I need to add the let them theory to my reading list.
You definitely should. It's one of those books that just makes you think differently about life and relationships. And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to unpack.
Well, I am all ears. Let's dive deeper. So we were talking about heartbreak.
Wow.
What are some of the specific things that Mel Robbins suggests for dealing with that?
One of her biggest pieces of advice is the 30 days no contact rule.
No contact at all. That sounds tough.
It is tough. But it's so important for giving yourself that space to heal and to detach from the relationship. Mel explains that every time that you engage with your ex, you're basically reactivating those neural pathways, those emotional triggers that keep you stuck in the pain.
It's like picking at a scab, preventing a wound from really healing properly. I get it.
Exactly. And it's not just about like blocking their number or unfollowing them on social media. It's about actively choosing to shift your focus away from them and back towards yourself.
That makes sense. So what kinds of things does she suggest you do during that no contact period?
Well, she encourages people to kind of let me grieve, to allow themselves to feel all the feels without judgment or trying to rush the process at all. It's about acknowledging those emotions and giving yourself permission to cry, to journal, to talk to friends, whatever you need to do to process the pain.
That sounds much healthier than that whole just get over it mentality that's often thrown around.
Right. It's about honoring your own experience and giving yourself the time and space that you need to heal. And she also emphasizes the importance of filling that void that's left by the relationship with things that bring you joy and that help you to reconnect with yourself.
But what kinds of things?
She suggests things like reconnecting with old friends or pursuing a passion project that you've been putting off, or even just like creating a cozy and inviting space for yourself at home. It's about rediscovering who you are outside of the relationship and nurturing those parts of yourself that might have been neglected.
I love that. It's turning heartbreak into an opportunity for growth and self-discovery.
Exactly. And she poses this really thought-provoking question. If you knew that the love of your life was just around the corner, how would you spend your time being single?
Wow, that's a good one. It really does put things in perspective, doesn't it?
It does. It's about shifting your mindset from feeling like you're missing out to embracing this chapter as a chance to become the best version of yourself.
Okay, I'm definitely adding this book to my reading list now. It sounds like there's so much practical wisdom backed into it.
There really is. And you know what else I loved? Her whole section on how to deal with adult children.
Adult children, you mean like our actual children when they grow up?
No. She's talking about those adults who exhibit what she calls adult childlike behavior.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. Those people who just throw tantrums and play the victim
Right.
and manipulate others to get their way.
Exactly. And it can be so frustrating to deal with. Right.
Oh, yeah.
But Mel's perspective on it is really eye-opening. She explains that a lot of these behaviors stem from emotional immaturity. So these people are basically still reacting from that wounded inner child, even though they're technically adults.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to look at it. It kind of takes the sting out of it, you know? It's less about them intentionally trying to be difficult and more about them not having developed the skills to cope with their emotions in a healthy way.
Exactly. And she emphasizes that while it's tempting to try to reason with them or to try to fix their problems for them, it's ultimately not our responsibility.
Mm.
You know, we can't force someone to grow up emotionally.
So what do you do? Just let them keep acting like a child?
Well, that's where let them comes in. It's about recognizing that their behavior is a reflection of their own internal struggles, not a personal attack on us. So it's about detaching from their emotional drama and focusing on what we can control, which is our own reactions and boundaries.
So it's about setting limits and not getting sucked into their chaos.
Exactly. And sometimes the most loving thing that we can do is to let them face the natural consequences of their actions. It's about trusting that they have the capacity to learn and grow from those experiences, even if it's messy and uncomfortable in the moment.
That's a tough one. But I do see your point. Sometimes enabling someone's bad behavior is what just keeps them stuck in that pattern.
Right. It's like she says in the book, you can't heal someone who doesn't want to be healed. And this whole idea of letting go, it applies to so many other areas of life too. She even talks about how to use it to overcome comparison and to achieve your goals.
Oh, that's something I definitely struggle with. It's so easy to get caught up in comparing yourself to others, especially with social media, constantly shoving everyone else's highlight reels in your face.
Tell me about it. It's like a recipe for self-doubt and misery. But Mel's perspective on comparison is really refreshing. She acknowledges that it's a natural human instinct, but she encourages us to shift from a place of self-torture to a place of learning.
What do you mean by that?
Well, she talks about two types of comparison. The first is what she calls torturous comparison,
Okay.
which is focusing on those fixed aspects of ourselves or our lives
Mm-hmm.
that we can't change, like our height or our family background or maybe even certain talents we weren't born with.
That kind of comparison is definitely a dead end. It's like constantly banging your head against a brick wall expecting a different outcome.
Exactly. And she says that the best thing to do with those kinds of comparisons is to just let them have those things,
Yeah.
those advantages, those talents, those lucky breaks, and to focus on what we can control. It's about accepting ourselves for who we are and focusing on our own unique strengths and potential.
That's a much healthier approach. So what's the other type of comparison?
Well, she says that there's another kind of comparison that can actually be incredibly valuable, and that's seeing other people's success as a source of inspiration and guidance. It's about recognizing that their achievements don't diminish our own possibilities, they actually expand them.
I like that. It's about seeing other people's wins as proof that what we want is possible, and maybe even getting some clues about how to get there ourselves.
Exactly. She calls it let them lead the way. It's like those people become these trailblazers, showing us what's possible and giving us a roadmap for how to get there.
That's a much more empowering way to think about it. Instead of feeling threatened by other people's success, you can actually learn from it and use it to fuel your own journey.
Exactly. And she emphasizes that for every goal that we have, there's usually a formula for success. Whether it's building a business or improving our health or mastering a new skill, someone out there has likely already figured out the steps. It's about being open to learning from those who've gone before us and letting their experiences guide our own journey.
That's really inspiring. It's like she's saying, we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. We can stand on the shoulders of giants and learn from their successes and mistakes.
Exactly. And one of the most powerful messages in this whole section is about taking responsibility for our own lives. It's about recognizing that while we can't control external circumstances or other people's actions, we can control our responses and our choices.
That's a great reminder. It's so easy to fall into that victim mentality, but ultimately, we have the power to create the life we want, even if it's not always easy.
And Mill talks about how we often give away our power by worrying about what other people think or by letting their opinions dictate our actions. She encourages us to just let them think what they want and to focus on living a life that feels authentic and aligned with our own values.
That's so important. It's about reclaiming that sense of agency, that belief that we have the power to choose our own path, regardless of what others might think or say. It's about stepping into our own power and living a life that makes us proud.
Exactly. And it's funny, but this whole conversation about comparison and taking responsibility Actually ties back to one of the things we were talking about earlier, finding love.
Oh, how so?
Well, Mel dives into all the complexities of modern dating in the book, and one of her
Yeah.
biggest pieces of advice is to shift our mindset from chasing love to choosing love.
That's interesting. What's the difference?
Well, chasing love is all about seeking validation outside of ourselves. It's about trying to win someone over, to prove our worth, to make them choose us. Choosing love, on the other hand, is about recognizing our own worthiness and being selective
Mm.
about who we allow into our lives.
So it's about having standards and not settling for less than we deserve.
Exactly. And it's about being willing to walk away from anyone who doesn't meet those standards,
Yeah.
even if it's hard.
That's where the let them principle comes in handy, right? It's about releasing that grip on trying to make someone like us or convince them to commit. It's about trusting that the right person will show up, and if they don't, we're strong enough to walk away.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our worthiness is not dependent on someone else's validation. We are worthy of love simply because we exist. And when we truly believe that, we attract a different kind of love, a love that is based on mutual respect, admiration, and a genuine connection.
That's beautiful. It's about shifting from a place of scarcity to a place of abundance, both in love and in life in general.
Exactly. And, speaking of abundance, one of the things that really struck me about the book was Mel's emphasis on the importance of cultivating a strong relationship with ourselves.
Oh, that's so important. I think a lot of us neglect that in pursuit of external validation and achievement.
It's so true. We're so busy trying to please others and achieve our goals that we forget to check in with ourselves and to make sure our own needs are being met.
And that's where so much of our unhappiness stems from, right? That disconnect from our own hearts and desires.
Absolutely. And Mel reminds us that the foundation for healthy and fulfilling relationships with others lies in the relationship that we cultivate with ourselves. It's about giving ourselves permission to prioritize our needs, to pursue our dreams, and to create a life that feels authentically us.
And that self-love isn't about vanity or self-indulgence. It's about recognizing our inherent worthiness, treating ourselves with kindness and compassion, and showing up in the world as the best version of ourselves.
Exactly. It's about asking ourselves those tough questions. Are we honoring our own boundaries? Are we speaking kindly to ourselves? Are we pursuing our passions? Or are we letting fear hold us back?
It's about reclaiming that sense of agency and realizing that we have the power to create a life that feels joyful and meaningful and aligned with our deepest desires.
And what's so inspiring is that Mel doesn't just preach these ideas, she actually walks the talk. Throughout the book, she shares her own personal stories of applying these principles in her own life. And it's really powerful to see how they've played out in her own journey.
That's what makes it so relatable, right? It's not just theory, it's real life.
Exactly. And that's what I love about the Let Them theory. It's not just a self-help book. It's a guide to living a more peaceful, empowered, and authentic life.
You've definitely sold me on this book. I need to get my hands on a copy ASAP.
You won't regret it. And you know what? We've only just scratched the surface of all the wisdom packed into this book. There's still so much more to explore.
Well, I'm all ears. Let's keep diving in.
So, as we've been talking about all these different aspects of the book, from relationships to personal growth, I keep coming back to this one central theme,
Oh, yeah. What's that?
that idea of letting go of control and embracing the power of our own responses.
Yeah, that seems to be the thread that weaves through the entire book, doesn't it?
It really does. And in the concluding chapters, Robbins brings it all together so beautifully.
I'm curious, how does she do that?
Well, she uses this amazing metaphor of the sky.
The sky. Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so she talks about how the sky is constantly changing, right? One minute it's sunny, the next minute it's cloudy, and then suddenly a storm rolls in.
Yeah, we all know how unpredictable the weather can be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just like we can't control the weather, we can't control all the external circumstances in our lives.
That's such a simple but profound truth, isn't it? We can plan and prepare all we want, but ultimately life throws us curveballs.
It really does. People will disappoint us. Challenges will arise. Things will happen that are completely outside of our control. But here's the thing. Mel Robbins reminds us that our power lies in how we choose to respond to those inevitable ups and downs. We get to decide whether we let those external events dictate our emotions, our actions, and ultimately our happiness.
Yeah, that's a powerful reminder. It's so easy to feel like we're victims of our circumstances, but ultimately we always have a choice in how we respond.
We do. And that choice can be incredibly liberating.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we're not defined by our past experiences or by what happens to us. We have the power to create a new narrative, a new reality for ourselves.
I love that. It's about taking ownership of our own lives, even when things feel chaotic and unpredictable.
Exactly. And she challenges us to ask ourselves this question: are we going to be like a tiny sailboat tossed about by the waves? Or are we going to be like a mighty ship with a strong rudder navigating those choppy waters with purpose and resilience?
What a vivid image. I think we all know which one we'd rather be.
Right. And it all comes down to that core message of reclaiming our power by focusing on what we can control: our thoughts, our beliefs, our actions, and ultimately our responses to the world around us.
It's about recognizing that even in the midst of difficult circumstances, we always have a choice in how we show up.
hmm And that choice, that ability to respond consciously, is what gives us true freedom.
It's about not letting external events dictate our internal state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, it's not about suppressing our emotions or pretending that everything is always rosy. It's about acknowledging those emotions, allowing ourselves to feel them fully, and then choosing how we want to move forward.
It's about responding, not reacting.
Exactly. And this shift in perspective, this willingness to let go of control and embrace the power of our own responses, is what ultimately leads to a more peaceful and empowered life.
It's about finding that inner strength and resilience that allows us to weather any storm.
And what's so inspiring is that Mel Robbins doesn't just talk about these ideas in a theoretical way. Throughout the book, she shares her own personal journey of applying these principles in her own life.
And it's not always been easy for her, right? She's faced her own share of challenges and setbacks.
She has. She talks about everything from navigating career changes and financial struggles to dealing with relationship issues and health problems.
And through it all, she's used the let them and let me principles to navigate those challenges and come out stronger on the other side.
Exactly. Her story is a testament to the transformative power of these ideas. It shows us that they're not just abstract concepts, they're practical tools that can help us create a life that feels more aligned, more authentic, and more fulfilling.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive into the let them theory, what's one insight that you're taking away with you?
Hmm. For me, it's that reminder that I always have a choice. No matter what's happening around me, I get to decide how I'm going to respond. And that's a really empowering feeling.
I love that. And for me, it's that emphasis on the importance of the relationship we have with ourselves. It's about recognizing our own worthiness, treating ourselves with kindness and compassion, and showing up in the world as our most authentic selves.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And this conversation is just the beginning. The Let Them Theory is one of those books that stays with you long after you finish reading it. It sparks new insights and opens up new possibilities.
It's a book that invites you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep choosing the life you deserve.
And if you're curious to dive deeper into these ideas for yourself, we highly recommend checking out the book.
You won't regret it.
Until next time, happy diving.